All right, we got a lot to talk about today, but this is going to be a little different because it's not just specifically Rays, Bucks, and Lightning. I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here and put my journalism hat on, perhaps a little bit, and take aim at USF baseball head coach Mitch Hannes, who I have not met. Understand he did a very good job this year. Improved their record, and it seems like things are heading in the right direction. Here's my bone: is that in his first year. To say he brought an old school approach would be generous. He stayed off social media, which very few coaches do in this day and age. He had minimal action or interactions with fans, except during press conferences and games. And toward the end of the season, Hannes began to decline interviews with the Oracle. Now, that's the student newspaper, not just for himself, but also declined requests for his players to speak to the Oracle with no explanation, right? Um, However, it looked like he selectively restricted interviews based on the outcome of games. That raised concern about fairness and transparency and all of that. Um, but he would allow those same players at times to speak with other media like the Jay Rescher Show. We love Jay, and so on. But for whatever reason, it got to the point where him and his players were not allowed to speak to the student newspaper. They sent 5 emails just to be told no. It came with no explanation, and then following a denial of another interview request April 11th. They asked to talk to their pitcher, Corey Braun. They followed up, and he just refused. And they didn't get any pitchers, and they didn't get any players. And so that's when Braun actually went on to talk to Jay Retcher. This was in April 2nd. And it went on like this pretty much through the whole season. And, before you know it, the athletic department had to get involved a little bit, and they put out a statement saying how much they, value their relationships with the media, including student journalists and whatnot. But nothing ever really changed. And, you know, it's one thing to say we're going to address it with the coach and whatnot, but then when nothing happens, um, it's disappointing to say the very least. And so here's my thing is that, like, look, you're new to the university. You may have done it a certain way somewhere else. I haven't done enough research to know exactly where he came from. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. He's a coach of a Division I baseball team. Back in the day, and even currently, I think any publicity you can get for a Division I or Division II or any kind of baseball team, it is not a high revenue producing sport. Ergo, you don't always get a lot of attention or media coverage, right, for your players, for your program, which the more you can get, particularly if you're successful, it leads to other players recognizing what you got going on at USF. This is antithetical to any coach I've ever heard of that, wants to say nothing, or at least, maybe at the minimum, he's picking winners about who he does or wants to talk to or allow his players to talk to. But it just yes, I'm sensitive. I'm in the business. Um, I've been blackballed before. This one seems to have come without explanation. I understood why people had an axe to grind with me. Didn't agree with it necessarily, but it's happened. And, at least you knew the explanation. But come on, man. Come on, man. This is baseball. What are we talking about? College baseball? We're talking about college baseball, man.
Well, a few things. One, this is the student newspaper.
Yeah.
Right?
They're aspiring journalists.
These are aspiring journalists that are learning.
Yes.
If there was something that happened, you didn't like a question,
somebody
an
wrote,
interview,
yeah.
whatever, that's when the coach can go to the paper or the writer itself and figure that stuff out. I've seen, and working in around colleges and that, I've seen coaches, especially with the student reporters, that if something happens, they'll pull them aside afterwards and talk to them.
Sure.
About how maybe you could have handled this differently or this, or why a coach wouldn't like this. Like, they're
You
learning.
also have faculty that manages that Oracle staff too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, and granted, we don't know why this happened.
No,
And this is,
that's the problem. They haven't really. There's not been a why that it seems as if the Oracle has received.
The other part is this is USF baseball, and we've talked about this before. When you're a college in a pro town, you've got the Bucs, the Lightning, and Rays. You've got 3 pro teams here. That doesn't even include the Rowdies and Sun and stuff, but the 3 major of the 4 or 5 major sports in this country.
Yeah.
You've got 3 pro teams here, and right now they're all winning.
Yeah.
They're all doing well.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get any attention for your program.
Right.
Like, one of the things that Amir Abdur-Rahim did so well, and Alex Golish does well as well, is they're always available for the media, always talking to the media, always pumping their program, always trying to get fans to come out and educate them about that.
Sure.
I don't understand why you wouldn't want that for your program.
I don't know.
The other part is some of these players in your team hope to go pro someday, whether it's minor league baseball, maybe get to the pros or whatever. Wouldn't some media experience do them good?
Absolutely.
Talking to the student newspaper,
yeah,
is going to be a problem.
No,
I just it's short-sighted. And granted, I don't know the reason, so maybe in his mind there is a valid reason. I don't know.
Look,
you don't
I don't
like
know.
Talking the media. Okay, I understand that.
Or maybe, listen, maybe it's just a student paper. He's been burned before. There's a lot of maybes here, right? This is all speculation, and that's maybe the most frustrating part of it. If the man would speak and say, here are the reasons I don't want myself or the Oracle or myself or my players speaking with the Oracle, that's one thing. But everybody's just throwing their hands up saying, nope, not going to do it. Can't return our calls. Doesn't want to talk. Won't let us talk to anybody. Like, that's just cowardice, right? At that point, you're a coward. Okay. I mean, if you got this policy, which is wrong, by the way, and I can't imagine an athletic director standing behind it. Of course, they've lost their athletic director, or at least did here, recently with Michael Kelly going to Navy. But like, if that's who you are, and it's like, well, I've always done it this way, I just don't waste my time with a student, that's just the wrong approach. I wouldn't want that at USF. I wouldn't want that at Florida or at Florida State. That's not the way you typically do business. And sometimes that student newspaper may be the only one at your games. Lord knows the Tampa Bay Times doesn't have enough bandwidth to cover you until or unless you get deep into a regional tournament and it looks like you have a chance to go to the College World Series. And it's not because we don't think USF is important or we don't value it. We simply don't have the staff and have to make choices, right? Which puts you probably more indebted to any coverage you can get, locally or even with a student newspaper. But it just smacks of arrogance a little bit and hubris, and like, I'm too big for you, student newspaper guy. You're in a college setting. You're developing these players. You're developing, students that you coach. Why not be on the other end of it and help some of these young aspiring reporters to learn their craft as well? You have something to offer as somebody who is going to field these questions and provide insights and things like that. It just, it's inexplicable. It's probably, like I said, a little arrogance is involved here. You're kind of big timing them. And if you're not, then say why, then give a reason, however vapid it might be. But I hate this idea that, and whether it was a student newspaper or the Tampa Bay Times, it's like, no, you also read the room, man. You're USF baseball, for God's sakes. You should be begging for any coverage you can get, right? So that people know you have a heartbeat. Aren't you trying to recruit good players? Don't you want people to learn about yourself and your program? Don't you want as many messages as you can get out there? And look, I haven't met this guy. He may be a great guy and a great coach and a great father and all those great things. And, maybe we would be best friends and, hang out and do barbecues if I lived next door to him. I don't know him, but that's part of it too, right? You're new here, right? So introduce yourself a little bit. It can't all be one loss record. I know that's the bottom line and that's how these guys are judged. But come on, Mitch. Let's let's drop the shield a little bit here, buddy, and engage with your student newspaper and go beyond that. All right. Well, I'm going to send Mitch and everybody who's listening to this podcast someplace, and that's International Plaza Mall. Go get a watch because you know what time it is? It's time to talk to the student newspaper. And how do you know that? Because you go down and you buy yourself a beautiful watch at Breitling Boutique. The Breitling company's been in business for over 140 years, making great Swiss watches. And they've been in International Plaza Mall for more than 5 years. Now, you go to the center of the mall. Most of you are familiar with it. It's upstairs, second floor. You're going to have some of the best customer service you've ever witnessed. This is a terrific store, terrific showcase for their products. Come in, spend some time, right? They'll pour you a drink. Enjoy learning about their products, the beautiful chronomat watches, Navitimers for the men's. They also have women's watches for your wife, for your girlfriend. These are sports watches. They are durable, and she will have an assortment of colored wristbands to choose from. Also, while supplies last, and that's the key here, there are 32 teams in the NFL, and Breitling Boutique is celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary by offering these 32 different team watches. These have the color of the team, their team colors in the face of the watch. They have the logos. Go to tampabay.com, take a look at the Bucs Chronomat watch. It's really sensational. Again, while supplies last. It's Breitling Boutique. They're at International Plaza Mall. Make sure when you go, you tell them that you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. I wanted to bring this up because the other day, Travis Kelce was speaking about Travis Hunter, the Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, their first round pick from Colorado. And he's a two-way player, and the plan is for him to play both ways in the NFL as well. Maybe not full-time, does he play full-time on offense, part-time on defense, or the other way around? But he can play on both sides of the ball. And what Travis Kelce brought up with that aspect of Hunter's situation is how are opponents going to attack him? Kansas City is in the AFC, likely to play them somewhere down the road. And what he said was, about him eventually playing both sides of the football. He said, both sides? That's the thing. I don't know how they're going to divvy it out. He says, I don't know, because teams are going to try to go after him. They're going to try and make his day miserable. And if he plays corner, they're going to run deep balls at him all day. They're going to run wide receivers just to take him off, just to take off on him all day, and just to try to get him tired. Why wouldn't you just attack him that way? I agree. I absolutely think that teams are going to want to fatigue him, make him cover guys down the field as much as possible, take his legs away from his offensive standpoint. You raised a good point when we were discussing this a little bit before the podcast that another way to tire him out is make him play the run right at him, make him tackle.
Not only run right at him, because you may not always do that. You're not always going to run at him. But every running play, whatever receiver he's lined up against, go hit the hell out of him.
Oh, yeah. Get physical.
Yep, every one of it. I mean, you're just going to – every play you can get your hands on him, hit him.
Absolutely.
That may tire him out more than the running, quite frankly, because he's been running all game long for college and everything else.
That's what he does the best is run, yeah.
Right. The physicalness of it is going to be what – can he handle that part on defense? Because – that's what I mean. That if I'm attacking him, every running play, whatever receiver, go block him, and I mean block him, not get in his way.
Right.
I mean, go hit him, put him on the ground.
Right.
Or try to every play.
Yeah. Well, look, very few corners, and it's not a secret. They get paid to defend receivers. They get paid to make interceptions and passes defense and things like that. Do they have to tackle? Yeah. Is it what they want to do? No. Are they built for it necessarily? Probably not. So when you find a corner who can do that as well, now you have a guy that you call a Pro Bowler usually. And there are a few. The Bucs were very fortunate back in the day. They had a great defense. Ronnie Barber was a great tackler. They had good defensive backs that would come up and force plays, set the edge. Do different things that they needed to do to get guys on the ground. And yet, you're right. They don't want to have to play the run. They don't want to have to knife their way through a couple 300-pounders or, take on a tight end and that sort of thing. So that would take the starch out of his legs. My personal belief, and they haven't really said, they've just said he's going to play both ways. But knowing the Jaguars and knowing that so much of your organization is wrapped up in what, right? It's Trevor Lawrence. It's your quarterback. I mean, they're paying him 165 million, whatever the contract was, and he hasn't exactly fulfilled his status of being the number one overall pick just yet, right? He needs some playoff success, and they've tried to build around him. I don't know that they're there yet with the offensive line. I mean, Robert Hainsey is going to be his center that Liam Cohen brought from the Bucs. Hainsey did not start last year, because the Bucs drafted obviously a center. But so their offensive line, I don't think is quite there. But listen, if I'm trying to build around Trevor Lawrence, then I want Hunter to be a wide receiver primarily. Doesn't mean I won't play him on defense because I have a special guy and he's capable of doing a great job on both. But I'm going to lean both as a play caller and as a guy that needs to get my quarterback going. I'm going to lean on giving him another option. That's he's a terrific football player at receiver as well. Now, how do I do this? Do I not make him a two-way player? No, that would be foolish because he is a guy that has tremendous stamina, and can be an impact player at either position, right? And we can argue which position is more impactful, but if he plays defense, yeah, wear him out. Sure, that sounds great. I don't think if I'm the Jaguars, I'm going to play him much on defense until or unless it's a critical series at a critical time in the game or a 2-minute drill at the end of the first half or at the end of the game. That's when, game on the line, third down conversion, get the ball back. Maybe I'm trailing. Like that's where you're going to see, in my opinion, where I would put, Hunter in the game and say, hey, do what you can to make a play on the football. Help us blanket the coverage so we can get to the quarterback. Like we need a stop. We got to have this stop for a chance to win. That's when, if I were the Jaguars, that's when Travis Hunter would be going into the game. The other part of it is that if you try to split that baby in half, tell me how practice works, because it's one thing whatever Dion did at Colorado, but these practices are regimented as hell, and you have your offensive periods and you have your defensive periods, and there's a lot of verbiage, and I'm not saying he can't learn it, but it takes time. And to have the guy practice with the offense for part of the practice and say no, you're going over here at corner, um, you know it's not an easy switch. How do you get him enough reps on the other side of the football that you're not taking away from what he can do from you on offense or vice versa? So it's going to be an interesting sort of way to massage this with the Jaguars. I think we're going to see a lot of them. And in fact, who the last defensive back to start 8 games on offense and start 8 games on defense? Yeah, that would be his former coach, Deion Sanders. He's the only guy that's done it since. And wouldn't it be ironic if somehow, and it really would just depend on, how you start the game, right? If you're on defense, he could start at corner. If they're on offense, he could start on offense, but rare talent. And I would use him personally, knowing what Cohen can do in the passing game, knowing what he needs for Trevor Lawrence. I'd use him on offense and just, make very specific, game situations where I'd want to play him on D. That's just me.
All right, Rick, we'll get to some mailbag questions here we had come in. And Michael tweeted us first. He says, great podcast today, referring to Monday's show. He says, USA isn't developing talent at the same pace as European countries because of the pay-to-play model. From travel ball to many of the MLS academies, the parents have to pay. European clubs give free scholarships from the age of 6 to 18 years old. And that's an extremely good point on why USA is not matching the rest of the world in soccer at this point.
I would agree with you in this standpoint. I mean, and look, my girls are in dance, and I think I could put one through college before she's done dancing, okay? It's not inexpensive. It's extremely expensive. She's in a competitive team, and you could say that about cheerleading, but you can certainly say that about AAU anything, right? And especially AAU soccer. My brother-in-law's son has played travel soccer now, and I mean, they go everywhere. like, and cross state lines very often to tournaments in Texas and different places. It's not every man's sport. You have to have a ton of money to join these club teams, and um, I don't know if it's prohibitively more in soccer than it would be in another sport, but it's a lot. So that rules out people right there.
No question about it. And look, all the sports are expensive. I mean, you go play
They
travel
are.
baseball,
They
you
are.
play travel basketball, like
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
all expensive. Volleyball, I've got
Yep.
friends doing that. It's
Yep.
amazing
Oh
what
yeah.
you can spend. But a lot of those other sports, you don't have to necessarily be on a travel ball team to be able to make it, or to be on one that does that much traveling to still get to college and everything else. We talked about how the colleges are for soccer recruiting from Europe and South America more than America.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have all the opportunities. So you feel you have to pay that money, and it is very cost prohibitive for everybody.
I mean, it's at the point where some of these kids don't play for their high school team because they're not as good, or it's not as important as continuing to play for their club team.
Mm-hmm.
That never made any sense to me. It's like you only go through high school once. If you got a good club team, go play for your
Well,
high
heck,
school. But
there's a lot of high school teams that won't even look at you if you're not on a travel ball team.
that too. That's true in
Like,
baseball.
you could
for
be
sure.
better. You could be better than the guys in the travel ball team, but they won't look at you because you're not on a travel ball team.
That's right. No, that's absolutely true, and it's unfair and all that. And it's not. I'm not going to beat up soccer per se,
Well,
but no,
I was talking about baseball. I know that for a
I know
fact
you're
in
talking about
baseball.
baseball. Yeah, I know. I
And
know.
I'm sure it's not the only sports.
No, it was that way. Look, when my son was at Eastlake and he stopped playing baseball about 13 or 14 years old, but you had to make the right travel team that was generally coached or um, organized by, the high school coaches. And you had to be on that team. You had to earn your way on that team if you're going to have a chance to try out and make the baseball team in high school.
The
So,
youth sports have become a very big business, and it's not
is it ever?
necessarily about development. Now, it doesn't mean people within that industry aren't truly committed to developing players and teaching,
Right.
but the industry itself is about the money maker for it instead
Yep.
of developing the next Team USA soccer member. I mean, they're, like I said, I'm not saying they're not trying to develop kids. They're not scamming you per se, but
It comes with a big price tag. Look, when
Mhm.
I saw, and this is many years ago, and I'm not trying to beat up on baseball or anybody in particular, and I won't name names, but like when it was $100 to throw Johnny batting practice for an hour or a half hour or 45 minutes, whatever the duration was, and basically the coach is sitting on a baseball bucket on his rear end with a screen in front of him, just from about 40 feet, 35 feet, saying load and throwing the ball, swing, load. And I'm thinking, and they were lining up. I mean, some of these moms, they sell them the dream, right? They sell them the dream. Hey, you know what? If your kid will take my batting lessons for a month, then I think I can turn his life around, and he can make my AAU team. My 10 and under, or 10 and over, or whatever it is. And man, they'd line up to pay these guys $100 an hour to throw batting practice to their kid in the cage. And I'm not saying they didn't benefit from it or they weren't good coaches, but it wasn't inexpensive. But it was also, that's how they got kids in the pipeline to go from little league, which is what we were playing, to AAU. And we played with both guys. They would play 2 little league games a week, and then they play another 6 travel ball games and 2 on Sunday. So they're playing every day of the week. It was a lot, but yeah, the money is not insignificant, and if those other countries have opportunities for guys to go and play and have scholarships or not have to come out of pocket, like that's a huge advantage for as far as developing players goes.
All right, Eric in Texas tweeted us. Says, Rick, the Florida Gators once again have the most difficult schedule in the country this year. If Billy Napier goes 7-5 again, is it time to let him go? And if so, who are some options to replace him?
Well, I'm only 85 years old. Actually, he's 80 now, Steve Spurrier. I This is always tricky for me because it's like, Okay, how many wins does he need to keep his job? I've heard this with Todd Bowles every year. It was, well, he's got to win the division. No, he's got to win 9. No, he's got to win one more. No, he's got to win one more and a playoff game. Like, we can move the bar wherever we were happy to, but the fact of the matter is that you can't tell me that it's the same to go 7-5 if I lose my starting quarterback and I'm 7-1 and I end up 7-5, right? Or, you know, do I start out, my guy gets hurt maybe in week 1 and I'm 1-5 and then I win 6 in a row to end the season. Records are just that. I mean, how did you get there? Who did you beat, right? How competitive were you in the games you lost? So I think they really like Napier. Let's see what they can do now. Again with a young quarterback. Like, there's a lot of factors. I think recruiting has gone pretty well. Clearly, he's had special team issues. There's been some things, right, that haven't gone well. But the college game isn't unlike any other game. It's about the quarterback, and DJ Lagway is supposed to be that guy. Supposed to have a big year. He showed great glimpses of it, when he was pressed into service a year ago. So 7-5 isn't special, and maybe it's not good enough for the Gators, who have national championship aspirations every year. But I'm not ready to throw him out yet. If you told me that was a record, unless you could tell me how he got there. How did he get there? What happened? Where did they improve? Where did they not get better? And how much of it is on the coach, right? So I don't know that 7-5 gets him fired. I know they have, and he's right about the schedule. Like, this is the hardest schedule in the nation. It's incredibly hard. I mean, some of the teams that they're going to have to beat to get to 7 wins are going to be elite teams, because there's not many cupcakes on there. So, um, you know, I think Napier's got him going in the right direction. It's going to depend, no surprise, on the development of the quarterback, how much you can grow with him quickly, and then we'll see. But I is he on the hot seat? Yeah, I mean, aren't they all really? Especially in the toughest league in the nation, in the SEC, they're all kind of on the hot seat.
All right, Greg had tweeted. He says, has any NFL team won this many consecutive division titles, one Super Bowl with 2 different head coaches, 2 different starting quarterbacks, and 3 different OCs over the past 5 years?
The head coach thing would be difficult. The quarterbacks, you're not going to have a different OC 4 years in a row. That might happen 2 or 3 times. So, without any empirical data, having researched this, I would think it'd be highly unlikely that a team has done what was just stated there.
I was wondering, I was thinking, and I didn't do any research, but,
Yeah.
When they switched from Cowher to Tomlin in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
they would have obviously switched some coaches on there, and Tomlin won a Super Bowl really early
He
in
did.
his career. I don't remember if they won division titles like that many years in a row at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But, trying to think of particularly the 2 coaches part, like,
Yeah. That's a good one.
When do you keep that kind of continuity?
Right.
When you switch coaches, it doesn't usually. Most of the time you switch coaches because they did a poor job.
Right. I mean, look, Tony Dungy was successful.
Yeah.
He went to the playoffs 4 times in 6 years, got him to an NFC championship game, and they fired him. And then the guy who came in next won a Super Bowl.
Right.
So
He didn't have the division titles, but it was a lot of success between the 2.
yeah, he did
sure.
win. He did win division titles, though. Tony did
Yeah.
in the NFC North.
Yeah, but I mean the consecutive division
It
titles.
wasn't consecutive. That's correct. You didn't win 3 in a row or 4 in a row. I guess it's been now, but he did make it in 4 out of 6 years. So off the top of my head, no. But then they've been playing football for a long time in the National Football League. I'm sure we've forgotten some things, in some teams that might have done it. But yeah, it's what's your biggest point is it's been a hell of a run. It's been a hell of a run with 2 different quarterbacks, both of them free agents coming in here. Both of them motivated to show they still had something to prove, and there's a lot of parallels there. All right, thanks for your questions. We'll get to more of those throughout the week, and send them to us anytime on the internet, as the kids call it, X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at NFL Stroud, at SportsDayTB, or my email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. Go see our friends at Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Check out the Navatimers, the 32 team NFL team watches while supplies last. They have ladies' watches as well, sports watches for your wife, your girlfriend. It's Breitling Boutique International Plaza. Tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. The Rays wrap up or have a day game series, I guess, against the Tigers today. And we'll see how they fare in that one. As always, thanks for listening. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.